Welcome to the Fellowship Podcast, a place where we get to know the people who make up the Baptist Bible Fellowship. In each episode, we sit down with pastors, missionaries, and ministry leaders from across our fellowship to hear their stories, their ministry journey, and a few lessons they've learned along the way. Our goal is simple: to connect leaders, share stories, and strengthen the mission. And now, here's your host, Randy Harp. Let's join the conversation.
Well, hello, welcome to the very first episode of the Fellowship Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Harp. Excited to have as our very first guest, BBFI President Jon Haley on with us today. I'm excited about this brand new resource for the Baptist Bible Fellowship. What you're going to hear us say often along the lines of this, there's really three goals that we have. That's to connect leaders together within our fellowship, just to share stories, and then to strengthen our mission of what we're trying to do. So I'm looking forward to this. Jon, thanks for being our very first guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And as he mentioned, we are, the longer I've been on the executive committee, the more I'm like, we have men who love God, who love people, and we got to figure out how to just connect with other pastors. We just don't connect as well as we used to. So thanks for hosting this, Randy, and kind of putting this agenda for us.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. So we're going to, just as an FYI to everybody, starting from the very beginning, episode 1, that we're going to release this the first and third Thursday of every month. So we picked Thursday because that's usually kind of a breather day for a lot of guys. You'll be able to download it on Apple, Spotify, watch it on YouTube, all over the place. So you can watch them that way. And we're going to start with all the executive committee, so everybody can get to know our executive committee a little bit more on a personal level, and then we're going to expand out from there. So if you've got a suggestion on somebody you want me to reach out to and do an interview with, send me a text or an email, and we'll get them on our schedule. So just a few things. There are several questions that I've kind of written down. I've sent these to Jon a little bit ahead of time, but again, the idea is just to be as relational as possible, get to know each other. So Jon, why don't we just kind of start? Share a little bit about who you are. Where'd you grow up? What was life like for you growing up as a kid? I know ministry family, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I actually was born into the BBF, right? And I'll talk about that, I think, in one of the other questions. But mostly grew up in South Central Kansas. If you're from that city, you'll either call it Ark City or Arkansas City. If you're not from there, you would call it Arkansas City. Yeah. Located on the Arkansas River. Unless you're from there, you would call it the Arkansas River. But that's where I grew up.
Arkansas.
Yeah. I mean, it does have an S on the end of it, so we won't get into phonics yet. But so I mostly grew up there from age 1 to 15. My dad, of course, many of you know, Mike Haley, pastored that church for many years, and God saw a lot of growth. And then we were just, a few hours away from Springfield, Missouri, so spent a lot of time there. Most of the teachers my dad would hire for the Christian school there were from Baptist Bible College, and back then in the late 70s, early 80s. And so that's kind of where I grew up. I finished high school, though, in Sweetwater, Texas, at another BBF church, Broadway Baptist. And so, again, my dad was the pastor there. And then from graduation, went to Baptist Bible College, or Mission University now. So my upbringing was really in a Christian school and a independent Baptist church through the BBFI, and revolved around those two things in sports. And so I have a twin brother. Most of you know that, Michael, and we grew up very competitive with each other and whatever sport field we found ourselves on. So.
Yeah. So you talked about Sweetwater, Texas. Did you go to the Rattlesnake Roundup every year?
Yeah. It's funny. Growing up in Kansas, kind of isolated, right, in a small little rural farming town. And when my dad said, I think we might move to Sweetwater, Texas, my only thought of Texas would be that people were probably riding their horses to school. And then we pull into town, and the Ranch House Inn is where we were going to stay at. And wouldn't you know that we pull up and they have big advertisement, stalls for your horses in the back. And I thought all my fears, all my preconceived ideas of what Texas would be like lived up to it. It seemed like in that moment. Yeah. And of course, it's home of the world's largest rattlesnake roundup. Yeah. So I went to the Coliseum. I think I only went in there one time. there's like, 10,000 rattlesnakes on the ground, and they fry them up and eat them like they're chicken. But yeah, I did it once. That's it.
Yeah. You ate a rattlesnake once?
I ate it once. It was a really greasy, like not much meat chicken.
Yeah.
So it's Popeyes, I guess.
So growing up in a ministry home, I'm sure there's probably a lot of these, but who are some of the early kind of influences on your life?
Oh yeah. So, back in the day, I always remember a lot of them, but one of the ones that I guess the story reminds me of is Carl Boonstra. And in fact, just a few years ago at Laverne Rogers' funeral, I got to talk to Carl Boonstra again. What was he then? Probably 96 at the time, and just before he passed. And I said, I got a story I remember about you, Brother Boonstra. You were at Horn Creek Ranch Camp, and they had the big tubing hill, and he comes flying down the hill. And of course, at that point, I was, 10 years old, and Carl Boonstra, I thought, was 100 then. And he comes flying down the hill, and he misses the barrier, had like a net there to catch him, and he goes off over in the rocks. I really thought this old man is dead. But that was a memory I had of him. And of course, all the W.E. Dow when I was a little boy. I remember walking in the field house for fellowship week. It was probably a 6-year-old kid, just completely packed out and mesmerized by all of these people wearing suits and ties. But it was,
you have your suit and tie?
I think I had a shirt and tie on. I'm not sure if I had a coat. I think I fought that too much. And since there was two of us, we could usually win the fight.
Yeah, there you go. So you grew up in ministry home, then you went to Baptist Bible College, Michigan University. Now, what years was that?
So I went in 91 and graduated in 95.
Yeah, and then took the youth ministry route?
Yeah, so I left there in 95, and I took a job with, his name was Lucius Hill. He went by Lou Hill. Most people in West Texas or Texas area are pretty familiar with Lou Hill. Great man of God. He's passed away since then, but he hired me. In fact, I was at youth camp, so we didn't get a job out of college. And so I ended up just on a spur of the moment, we ended up being chaperones for one of the BBC traveling teams. So we found out on Friday and we left on Monday, my wife Joy and I. And so I thought, well, I don't have a job yet. I bet I can find a job on the road, being at all these camps. The last camp we were at was at the Summit Lake, I think, there in Pennsylvania. Ed Schrinkle and Anthony Miles were running it. And I got a message to call Lou Hill. Walked up the hill to a payphone, called him and set an appointment to go to Austin. So we moved to Austin in 95 and we're there 2 years at Woodcliff Baptist, BBF Church there. And then we moved to Hallmark Church in 97. So I have a long history now with Hallmark.
Yeah. So I didn't ask you about this. I should have said this before I asked about your youth job, ministry job. So you met Joel, you met your wife at college, right?
Yeah. So we had met one time in Sweetwater. Both her parents grew up in Sweetwater. Her granddad, her granddad was Raymond Dunn, who was at the Texas Hotel. I got a plaque over here in my office certifying that he was there. So he pastored two of the same churches my dad did. Raymond Dunn pastored in Sweetwater for 22 years. And when he left that church, he came to Hallmark Church in Fort Worth and pastored here for 5 years. My dad did the inverse of that, about 30 years apart. My dad pastored in Sweetwater for 5 years and pastored at Hallmark for 22 after he left Broadway Baptist. So because her grandparents, some of them still lived in Sweetwater, she came. I met her once in high school, but really my sophomore year of college is when she came as a freshman. We met, we did the normal ring by swing. What is that? Ring by spring. Yeah. So we met in September and got married in July. It was pretty quick. So yeah, that's Joy.
That's the BBC way.
That's the BBC way, right? So yeah. Sure.
So you're a youth pastor at Hallmark. Then you went and you pastored another church before you came back to Hallmark, right?
Yes. So I was student pastor from 97 to 2010 at Hallmark. And then just felt like God was stirring me to go pastor a church. My dad had been putting me off for a couple of years because he just soon, I think he just soon the grandkids stay would be more of the priority. But in 2010, we went back to the town I grew up in, Ark City, Kansas, and I pastored a different church, Northside Baptist Church, which at the time was pretty independent, but is now BBFI Church. And a friend of mine, Ryan Whitley, pastors there now. Been there since I left. But so I pastored there from 2010 to 2016. When my dad retired, here at Hallmark, they called and went through the process and asked if we would consider putting our name in as a candidate. So we ended up moving back here in 2016. So almost 9 years coming up on.
Yeah, that is crazy. It's been that long. So that's what, 25 years about, at least, of being in ministry. So
30 years. We graduated in 95.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yep. So that's a big year for you coming back to school.
Yeah. I don't know if they'll let me back on campus. So hopefully they'll let me.
Have you paid off all your fines yet? That's the.
I only got one. I only got called to the office one time, and I'm not going to talk about what that was about.
Oh yeah, we'll skip that.
Yeah, I was just it was making noise in class, but you guys could let your imagination go with that one.
Uh-oh. So in 30 years, what are some of the highlights? What's some of the greatest joys of 30 years in ministry now?
I had something written down, but what just came to mind when you asked the question was, when you've been in ministry a long time and been in this place a long time, my history at Hallmark back to 97.
Yeah.
A few months ago, I think I shared this story actually, now that I'm thinking about it, in South Dakota at the amphitheater out there. But I remember being at youth camp, and it was one of those youth camps that was not from heaven, if you know what I'm talking about. Keith and Kenny Gilman were like tag team preaching.
Oh yeah.
I had 100 high school kids that were just, I think most of them should have been in jail. But anyways, they, I had a come to Jesus meeting at that camp. Walked out in the woods one day and just said, all right, if this is what this is about, I don't think I can do it. That was the only time in my life, in our marriage, that my wife said, hey, I don't know if I can do this. And so I had a come to Jesus meeting out in the woods on a log, and God gave us strength. We kept going. That was, back in like 1998. It's been a long time ago. But a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago now, this guy shows back up to Hallmark, and I got to baptize his daughter. And I realized as I was baptizing his daughter that he got saved that week of camp.
Wow. When
Ken and Keith Gilman were speaking. And I think it's moments like that you realize that, the ministry, we all know is tough. And we all have those days where we're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. But God every once in a while gives you those glimpses of that generational ministry of, and I got to tell Kenny and Keith that in South Dakota. I was like, hey, and then they shared a little personal story. That's their story to tell, but they shared a personal story about that period of their life. And so even here now, close to 30 years later, God's encouraging them through the story that he encouraged me. So, I could tell 100 stories like that. That's the one that comes to my mind.
Yeah. That's one of the neat things about being back at a place for a while, is seeing that. So, for sure. Let's talk about the fellowship for just a minute. So I appreciate your involvement in the fellowship. Really, like you said, you're almost born into it. But you haven't ever shied away from it, and very involved now, serving as president of our fellowship. I don't have to ask you how you got involved, because you've always been involved. But what was it that made you want to get involved in a leadership role rather than just you are fellowship? Right. You want to be involved in leadership?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever had like a strong desire just to jump in and get involved. Somebody asked me, it's been a while ago now, would you serve as on the alumni board for BBC? And that was back, my ulterior motive, my son was going to be a freshman. I think that's the timeline. And so I said, I'll help out. And that turned into being vice president to president. And then someone asked about, hey, would you mind having your name put on the ballot for first vice president, if, sure. So I don't know if it's anything I sought out, which if like in a moment of just full transparency, I don't know that anyone on the executive committee truly like it was an initiative or a goal they've had for the last 10 years to serve on the executive committee. I think it was just, for me anyways, it was just like, I love the Baptist Bible Fellowship. If they need me to serve, I'll be happy to serve. If I can help, that's what I want to do. So it's just kind of, I guess, really how I've lived my life in ministry too, is if God opens a door, I just want to walk through every door he opens, and he just keeps opening these doors. Sometimes I assume he wouldn't have. But that is truly why I one of the reasons I'm thankful for this podcast is I think that if people will hear the heart of the people that are serving them through the executive committee, they'll know that this is not like an agenda-driven group.
Right.
It really is like, how can we serve Baptist pastors in their churches to see more people find and follow Jesus? That's it. Yeah. So if I can help that, man, I want to do that. And the church I serve at kind of lends itself to that. We have a legacy church here of the BBFI, and missionaries that have been sent out and sponsored and supported, and so who wants that to stop? Right. Not me, not on my watch. That's what I would say.
Right. So I've heard of another president right now that the rumors are that he's wanting to seek a third term as president. Finishing your second term now, you're going to try to find your way to get in for a third term as president?
No, I want to make sure the bylaws are very ironclad that can't happen.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we've spent a lot of time together, with you on the executive committee and praying and brainstorming and pleading with God on, direction for the fellowship. What's something about in the fellowship right now that you're excited about?
I think we've actually in the last few years, even last year or so, have added several new state fellowships. And so I'm excited about that. And a lot of them are being led by younger pastors. Yeah. I think sometimes people look at like me as one of the younger generation, but I'm really not. It's like we need to. So I think we're having an intensive and intentional effort to let's get some of those 30-year-old pastors who have some experience, who have new eyes, new vision, and get them plugged in. So that's kind of what excites me. We had our last in February, our state rep meeting, and we call it an advance because we want to move the fellowship forward.
Right.
But it was filled with like all the generations, and it's getting younger and younger. So that excites me, is how can we continue to, as a fellowship, reach the younger generation of pastors and leaders.
Yeah, that is exciting. And we got, where I'm interviewing, or we're talking right now, we're right before fellowship week, and there's 3 brand new state reps going to be here next week for fellowship week. So excited about that. So in the 30 years of ministry, so if you could go back and talk to yourself 30 years ago, just getting started, what's a leadership lesson, or what's something that you would tell to your younger self 30 years ago, or one of these young leaders you're talking about in the fellowship? What's something that you've learned that you could go back and tell yourself or tell those guys?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be another day and another opportunity, right? Take care of your family. Take care of your family, because I learned this a hard lesson when I was first in ministry. I spent the entire summer with 2 kids that didn't have a dad at home. I picked them up every day. We played basketball. They served at the church with me. I did everything with those kids. And the next summer, I barely saw them. I invested so much time in them. And I'm not saying the investment was wrong, but I would not want to overinvest in other people and then underinvest in my family.
Yeah.
Because who's still with me is my family.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things I was thinking, I love this statement, says the quiet discipline no one sees will develop the leader everyone follows. And so I think it's practicing the old book, right? Practicing the presence of God.
Yeah.
I wish I had learned that. I'm still learning it. I don't have it figured out. I wish I'd invested more time in the presence of God. We're starting a series called Missing Peace. And I preached Sunday from John 14:27. Jesus said, "My peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you." And just realizing God's what we need, right? If I will practice the presence of Christ, I can't have peace apart from the giver of peace or the Prince of Peace. So I would say to all you younger guys out there, older guys, we need the lesson sometimes as much as the younger guys is don't neglect your time with the Lord. Because that's where the power source is. That's what Moses said, right? I don't want to go if I don't have your presence. So I was reading this morning. Let me read these 2 verses if I got time.
Oh yeah.
Psalm 16:11. David says, "You will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." It's interesting because one of the men in my life who has been a mentor of my life since I was 16 years old was Steve Switzer. And he's doing the Bible recap plan with me. A bunch of people from our church are doing it. And he highlighted that verse today. And again, it's like, so again, a mentor still, and I highlighted this one from the reading day, Psalm 21:6. "For you made him most blessed forever. You made him exceedingly glad with your presence." And like just a reminder, joy and peace come from his presence, not how many people showed up to church or any of that. So I don't know if that answered your question exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, that's really good. You talked a minute ago about your kids, and I'm fortunate to know both your kids pretty well, and they're both ministry kids. They still love the Lord. I know there's no magic bullet or secret, but what's something that you did with your kids that they're both serving the Lord now?
And I don't know. I wish I had the answer. Me and my wife pray all the time about that. We say it's just God's grace. Here's what I know from being a preacher's kid and then being the dad to preacher's kids. I knew from my dad. My dad, if he was on the podcast, he'd tell you he was a workaholic. He's from that generation that just worked and worked and worked. And I mean, God used him in a great way for that. I told him as we were both adults, I said that, he kind of like wanted to talk through that, right? I'm sorry, I was always at work and always at church and there was always a meeting. And I said, here's what I know, Dad, is that I knew, and I didn't know this it's hard to understand as a 13-year-old, right? But as I process it, I always knew that my dad and my parents, my mom and dad, they loved Jesus. And they were doing everything they could for the Lord. Like, did they make mistakes? Yeah. So I think when I became a parent, I just wanted my kids to know that I love Jesus. I think it's because from what I had kind of processed in my dad. Now, I made some adjustments on my busyness and my schedule, and I tried to prioritize my kids. And, the Lord blessed me when we moved to Kansas. Our season of life changed. My daughter joined the golf team, and I got to golf with her all the time. My son, they asked me to coach at the high school football and basketball. And so I got to coach my son in football and basketball 3 years of the 4 years of his high school career. I mean, so God, he had favor on me to be able to spend time with him. But I think if we will prioritize them over the people, that is a huge thing. The kids understand. But ultimately, I always, interesting enough, I wrote a book about this on parenting, Fight for Your Family. And I'll boil it down to this. Parenting, like everything else, is stewardship. God has called us to steward the resource of our kids, right? They're not ours, they're his. He loves them more than we could love them, but we are called to steward them. So I think we look at parenting from the wrong perspective. We look at parenting from an outcome-based focus, like how my kids are going to turn out. But really, we should look at it as an obedience-based parenting. As a steward of my kids, the resource God has given me, I'm supposed to walk in obedience. like, how do I lead my kids well? How do I serve and love them and like Christ loves me? And so I think if we look at it from a different perspective, it's stewardship. So I don't think there's any like one key, one answer, but stewardship and stewarding what God has given you. If you look at it from that perspective and walking in obedience, I think it kind of takes some of the pressure off. Because I tell, we in ministry, we deal with parents all the time. And we've kind of, as a church, I think sometimes playing Proverbs 22:7 as a 22:6 as a promise, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. Well, it's not a promise, it's a principle. But because we've kind of preached it and taught it as a promise, only two things can happen. If your kid doesn't turn out like they're supposed to, then one of two things are going to happen. You're going to blame God or you're going to blame yourself.
Yeah.
And so, hey, it's stewardship. I'm going to do what God's called me to do. I'm going to walk in obedience, teach my kids to walk in obedience. The results are up to God.
Yeah.
And we've just been blessed. I say it's God's grace in our life.
That's good. That's good. Hey, just a couple more things. I'll get to some more kind of lighthearted, easy questions. But
yeah,
talked about your book. That's something you've done a lot more than a lot of other pastors. You've written several books. What's kind of your heart behind that, or did you always want to be an author, or where did that kind of desire come from?
I mean, originally it was I spent a lot of time in student ministry and parent ministry when I was the last couple of years of my student ministry, I focused a lot more on parents and trying to coach parents.
Yeah.
And so I think watching that, I mean, when you're young and you don't have kids, you know how to be a parent. And, I had all the assumptions everybody else did.
I've gone back to apologize to a lot of my teen parents when I was a youth pastor.
Yeah, we were all the same. Like, you know how to, I remember telling a parent that they wouldn't let their kid go to Costa Rica with me back in like 2001. And I was like, the safest place for them to be is like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like to have a 16-year-old kid. I don't think that's a true statement either, but the best place to be in God's will, not necessarily the safest, but no, so part of it was just a passion to help parents. And I always wanted to write a book, but if I'm going to be completely honest, my brother wrote a book and it kind of ticked me off that he wrote one before me. So I was like, that's kind of what drove me to actually get my
twin sibling rivalry. It's a thing, right?
Yeah, I told you we were competitive, and so I don't know how many books he's written, but I got to try to make sure I wrote at least one more.
One more than him. He just got a new one, so you got to step up.
Yeah, it's a good book too. He talks about hiking Kilimanjaro and the songs of the ascent. So.
Yeah. Well, good. So how many books have you written?
I think I've done like 4 actual books, and then I've written like 4 devotional books. So what we kind of stumbled onto something at church a couple of years ago that if people don't buy a book, but if I give them a book, they might read it. And so we've done several sermon series. Like the first one we did was on Ephesians. And so I wrote a 36-day devotional that went along with my sermon series, and then we just gave them out to people, and a lot of people read them. And so we've done that with a few different books. We did one on unshakable hope, going through 1 Peter. That one was really neat because I think the In Him book. So I wrote one in January on trust. We were, and it was just a topical devotional. Then we did the Ephesians one, and I had some of my staff help me write it just to kind of spread the wealth. And then what ended up happening is people really liked hearing from the staff, because you can learn about people's personality a little bit, even in a short devotional.
Yep.
And so then we did a 40-day devotional on unshakable hope, going through 1 Peter. And I asked my deacons and my Connect group leaders if they would be, and their wives would be willing to write one. And I think out of the 40 devotionals, I wrote one of them. So our church people, man, they loved reading everyone else's stories. So that was kind of cool. So to answer your question, I think it's been 4 and 4, something like that.
And that's a fun thing, and Amazon and Kindle's made that a lot easier to be able to do that for your church. So,
right. And very cost effective.
Yeah. All right. A couple, here's a fun one. If you weren't a pastor, if you weren't in ministry, what would you be doing?
And probably collecting trash. I don't know. No. What I wanted to be doing, the only other thing I ever really would have liked to have done was to be like on ESPN, right? To be a sportscaster, some kind of sports journalism, something.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have done that.
That'd been fun.
It would have been.
I can see on ESPN, right? Covering the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's right. Covering Luka getting traded and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that would have gone over well. All right, I got some quick hitters for you. I got a list I want to read. So just pick one or the other real quick. Would you rather read a book or watch a movie?
Watch a movie.
What's a better vacation, beach or mountains?
I would say mountains. My wife says beach, so we go to the beach.
Yeah. Favorite season, summer, fall, winter, or spring?
Oh, wow. Probably spring.
Yeah.
Summer in Texas is pretty crazy.
Yeah, summers are too hot.
Yeah.
College sports or professional sports?
Oh, college sports.
Better dessert, cake or pie?
Pie.
What's more relaxing, going fishing or going golfing?
Oh, fishing.
Yeah. Better pet, a dog or a cat?
Dog, no question.
Yeah, that's the easiest one I got.
Yeah.
Favorite Bible character besides Jesus?
Oh, we're reading a book I remember called Titus 10, and they asked that question: who would you want to model, or who do you think most resembles what you are? And I thought about it a lot. It's Barnabas. I want to be an encourager.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Cook at home or eat out?
Home.
Yeah. All right. If you got one meal for the rest of your life that you're going to eat, is it going to be pizza or tacos?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I'm going to go with pizza.
Pizza for the rest of your life?
Yep.
Yeah. That way you can get different types of crust. And
it's right? It's a little more diverse, I think. So,
yeah. Well, good. Hey, Jon, thanks for being on here. Our very first episode of the Fellowship Podcast. Hopefully you've learned something about Jon that maybe you didn't know before. And that's the goal of doing these podcasts. Doing each episode, we want to just connect with people together, share stories, and learn lessons along the way. What we're doing, strengthen our mission together. I do believe that as a fellowship, we are stronger together. So, Jon, thanks for your leadership in the fellowship. Thanks for your friendship and all that you do. So, any parting thoughts, last thoughts?
Hey, no, I just want to say, I got one more. People over projects, right?
Yeah.
And presence over productivity.
Presence over productivity. Good.
Yep.
People over projects. So you're on the relational side, not the task-oriented side.
That's me for sure. Yep, definitely.
Yeah. That's good. Really good. So when John Maxwell says great leaders walk slowly through the room, you get that completely, don't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I had a great model. My dad was still that way. He's still that way. I was like, Dad, we already started church. Go take a seat. He's still out there working the crowd.
Yeah. Yep. That's what you got to do. So, so again, thanks for being on. Thanks for listening, and looking forward to sharing more stories, more conversations along the way. Thanks a lot. God bless.
Thanks. See you guys.